Hello, Internet! You know, my diet isn't as varied as it could be, so I decided to look for some more healthy options this week. Maybe it's not a great idea to take culinary advice from a circle. Pac-Man has probably one of the largest legacies of any video game character, preceding even Mario. He's a guy that needs no introduction, but I'll give him one anyway. Most games from around that era were space shooting or sports-based, but Toru Iwatani wanted to make a game that could appeal to everyone, and everybody knows what eating is, right? So he made a game based around that. The original game was made with a basic cartoon-like style to it. You control the titular hungry yellow guy and outsmart colorful ghosts with big eyes, the game even featuring little cutscenes in between the stages. To say Pac-Man was popular would be a massive understatement. Companies Namco and Midway made a killing from cabinets and merch, and there was even a song made about the game. So they made more. Oh, did they? First off was Miss Pac-Man, a pretty simple expansion of the original with increased speed, color, and female representation. Junior Pac-Man introduced scrolling levels, and both have even more cute cutscenes with the characters. Then they made a quiz game with Professor Pac-Man and a pinball hybrid game with Baby Pac-Man. At this point it was starting to get confusing, and this was just the Midway releases. We have Super Pac-Man and Pac-N-Pal, both revolving around unlocking paths and featuring extra power-ups to give Pac-Man the ability to fly and stun ghosts. I've always been a fan of Miru, one of the few helpful ghosts. But the most unique entry from around this time was Pac-Land. It was one of the earliest side-scrolling platformers, mixing the classic elements of Pac-Man with this colorful fairyland which doesn't get used as much as it should. After these games, there was even more experimentation with this little yellow homunculus. Sure, Pac-Mania was pretty straightforward. All they really added was a new camera angle, more ghosts, and the power of vertical ascension. It's still a nice little Pac-Man game at its core, same with Pac-Man Arrangement. But then you have games like Pac-Man 2: The New Adventures. I don't even know how to explain this one. Pac-Man just sort of walks around on his own and you can mess with him sometimes? I don't get it. They also tried making a puzzle game called Pac-Attack and another platformer with Pac-in-Time, very creative names, I know, although it feels like they don't really have that much to do with Pac-Man. But this wasn't enough for Namco. They wanted to truly innovate and take their flagship series into the third dimension, and eventually they did with Pac-Man VR. Oh no, I'm not doing that again. Then they made Pac-Man World, a really neat little 3D platformer created for the character's 20th birthday. Pac-Man's family is kidnapped and he's got to travel to Ghost Island to save them. I enjoy how they translated the idea of Pac-Man into a new genre. Pac-Man feels bouncy and fun to control, there are plenty of pellets and bonus fruit to find, and Ghost Island has a ton of unique environments to explore. The secret mazes are a bit rough at times, but if you want you can select the original arcade game from the menu, which is a really nice little bonus. I also like Miss Pac-Man's Maze Madness, which took the classic maze formula and expanded on it with new mechanics and themes, while still remaining simple to grasp. And once again, you can play the classic Miss Pac-Man as well. And things kept going strong into the new millennium with one of humanity's greatest accomplishments. Pac-Man World 2 looks at what the first game established and runs with it, with dynamic camera angles, new power-ups, and much more enjoyable boss fights than in the original Pac-Man World. It might not expand on Pac-Man's moveset as much, and the collectibles feel a bit more disconnected, but this is an overall better package. You really get bang for your buck, especially with a full-on arcade. Pac-Man World 3 is a different story. There are returning characters and mechanics from the prior games, but the game is fully voiced and features Pac-Man going into the underworld and fighting whatever these things are. The writing is honestly pretty funny, and there are good ideas there, but the general atmosphere just doesn't feel right for Pac-Man, and stopping to fight a bunch of enemies isn't very engaging. Something I find interesting about companies like Namco is that they use nostalgia much more than others that have been around just as long, such as Nintendo or Sega. As early as the 90s, we were introduced to the Namco Museum line of titles that compiled arcade games from not too long ago at the time, with Pac-Man always appearing front and center. The biggest new releases from the late 2000s and early 2010s more or less took the original arcade game and tweaked it a bit, either increasing the competition element or making the kill screen an in-universe threat. Even in that weird era of the 2010s when Pac-Man and other game characters were in the middle of 3D animated reboots, one of the major titles at the time was a Pac-Man Museum. It might be weird to say that these are some of my favorite Pac-Man games, but outside of the collection itself, there are plenty of bonus items and customization, and each one gives a good impression of the respective era of the series. All of this brings us to Pac-Man World Re-Pac. It takes what was already a solid platformer and not only polishes the visuals, but also fixes some of the lesser parts of the original's gameplay to make an extremely high-quality remake. Pac-Man was a really fun series to take a deep dive into, and it showed that sometimes simplicity really is key. I wouldn't say he's the greatest nutritionist, though. Like, is this even edible?